And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
Hey, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, here we go. There's plenty to talk about today, as it's actually National Signing Day. Well, that kind of slipped up on us, didn't it? It's not really even a thing anymore. This used to be the longest day of the year for me personally, and now it's just kind of an afterthought. It is odd that National Signing Day is completely done with by the time you get to the first Wednesday in February. We'll talk about that. Also, Jimmy Hyams will join us just a little bit later in the program. The Mike Eckler move, should SEC fans be concerned that because of the television contract that the Big Ten has, they could start to lose guys? And I'm not just talking about coaches, but prospects as well. Should Tennessee just get rid of their spring game altogether? I want to get Jimmy's take on that. Also, Tennessee's basketball team to play in the Players Era Festival. And I don't know what to think of this yet, because basically the winner gets a big pile of cash. The loser gets nothing. It just seems weird to me this day in Tennessee sports history. Coming up, Josh Heupel left off a list of the next coach to potentially win a national championship, their first. I'm surprised he's not on the list. We'll get into that. Vols get the worst transfer portal grade in the SEC. Is that a big deal or not? That'll be Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Stat of the day, Onus Konanbanny. I hate that he's flipped to Florida because I like saying his name. Not a great surprise, but we'll jump into that. Also, we have four prospects to watch. This will go up on Off the Hook Sports here momentarily. One is actually already enrolled, so we're going to mix in some of those cats as well. So if you can, please hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Opens it up to more people. And we'll be joined by Jimmy Hyams here momentarily. Caleb, you look like you're thinking very, very hard. Are you okay?
I'm always thinking very, very hard. I'm just a very intelligent guy.
Well, I mean, the flip side, you wouldn't have to think that hard about challenging topics if you were super intelligent. So that could go either way.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't say that about you. That was a rhetorical you, not you as in Caleb, just you as in, yeah. I mean, if you don't have to think that hard for some things, does that make you a little bit smarter?
Or if you're the smartest people are just always thinking about something.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of that. Let's go ahead and get to Jimmy Hyams right now, who's nice enough to join us. Brought to you by National Fitness Center, where Jimmy is soon to beat me just like a drum in racquetball. It's a matter of time. Jimmy, how are you this morning?
Dave, I'm doing very well. How you guys doing?
Fantastic. We're going to go ahead and get rolling here. We've got a lot to get to. Want to get your thoughts on a spring game. You and I have talked about this off the air, but first it'll be today's tough question, and that's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, let's get into this right from the get, because I want to get Jimmy's take. And that is Mike Eckler leaving Tennessee to go to a Big Ten school. Caleb brought up the point, and I think it's a very valid one. as we look down the line, the Big Ten is, I think we would all agree, has a better television contract. Jimmy, would you agree with that?
Yes. More revenue. Yes.
More revenue. And I wonder how much this is one of those things that you don't talk about as often. You talk about great coaches with the X's and O's. You talk about the recruiting home base you have, but this could be a trend that Big Ten coaches are able to poach SEC coaches and perhaps even transfer portal players because of the significant amount of money that they'll have in a surplus over the SEC. How concerned do you think SEC fans should be about this and the fact they could eventually take a back seat to the Big Ten?
Well, I think it is a potential concern. Now, as far as like Mike Eckler, I don't know if he's making a lot more money going to Nebraska than what he made at Tennessee. He had coached at Nebraska before. Did he like living in Nebraska? Did he like living in Lincoln more than Knoxville? He certainly seemed to enjoy living in Knoxville based on the things that he said right off the bat. So I don't know all the reasons. If it's strictly money, then yes, that is a concern. Ohio State was well publicized to have the best team money could buy, allegedly paying $20 million on their roster. Having said that, I'm not so sure that other teams in the SEC couldn't have paid that much as well. Maybe they just chose not to. Now, part of this equation is Ohio had great recruiting classes. They bring in a ton of players, but the ones they brought in were impactful. Like the center, McLaughlin, who people don't talk about, he won the Remington Award. Caleb Downs at safety, an All-American. Quinshon Judkins, outstanding running back at Ole Miss. They brought in some really impactful transfers, and maybe they kept some people from leaving with our NIL deal. So I do think the fact that you have more money brings in the potential that you will have a better roster and perhaps be able to poach some coaches away. Now, Alabama lost 2 players to Ohio State. Why did Alabama lose them? I don't necessarily think it was NIL money. I think it's because Nick Saban retired. So there was an extenuating circumstance, at least with 2 players that Ohio State got from Alabama.
Jimmy, to your point about Ohio State, I understand what you're saying, but that was before the TV contract revenue came in because this was the first year of the new TV contract revenue. Mike Eckler's contract did expire on Friday. Dave and I basically talked about yesterday. People say he's a special teams coordinator. People who say special teams is a third of the game are lying. It's actually like 1/10 of the game if you look at the plays in special teams versus offense and defense. But I guess where I'm going with this is, what about the flip side? How much of this do you think was a school like Nebraska or another Big Ten school doesn't have to crunch numbers, but a school like Tennessee was thinking, he doesn't coach that many valuable positions. We probably need to save money here and go for somebody cheaper and not up his contract.
Well, so I have to ask this question. What's Nebraska paying him? I mean, maybe you know and I don't. If it's the same amount of money, it's a head scratcher. Was he making $350,000 at Tennessee? Mm-hmm. If Nebraska bumped it to 500, 550, 600,000, you got a really good point. Now, the guy that's being promoted is already making about $350,000 that I think they're going to promote anyway, right? So go ahead.
Sorry. I think Mike Eckler's salary was, I'm pulling it up now. It was $475 when he first got to Tennessee, but it was actually at $575 this past year.
Okay. All right. $575. And again, I don't know what Nebraska's paying him. Are they going to, the person they hire and promote, there was basically in what they used to call quality control, he's making $350,000. So is he going to go to 575, or is he going to stay at 350 and Tennessee saves $200,000? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll go back to that key word that I mentioned earlier. Potentially, this could lead to more schools from the Big Ten poaching coaches and getting players from the SEC.
Wow. Worst case scenario, you've got the NFL. And then the Big Ten would be AAA. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but the SEC would be AA. Surely to goodness, they'll do something where that won't happen. How long is the television contract that undercuts the SEC?
I don't know. I know that the Big Ten, as I recall, and look, my memory's not what it was, but I think they signed a 7-year deal. Okay. And the SEC signed didn't they sign like a 15-year deal? 10-year, at least a 10-year deal.
10-year deal.
10 years. And I remember kind of criticizing that. Why did you do it that long? That's like an athlete who has a chance to sign a 3-year deal and make $50 million a year instead of an 8-year deal or a 10-year deal. Sign the 3-year deal, then redo your contract and make even more money after 3 years. So I thought the SEC was a little bit short-sighted in having such a long contract that they signed with ESPN, ABC. So, but I do think I don't know how much more money. I know it is more money, but here's the thing too, which should play in favor of the SEC. And look, I understand that college athletes are more mobile now. You're more willing to go from California to Florida, from Florida to Michigan. I get all that. But I also think that there's such outstanding recruiting in the Southeast that I think you can overcome some of the money advantages that the Big Ten has.
I tend to agree with. Go ahead, Caleb.
Jimmy, I would agree with you if there was a marginal difference in money between the Big Ten and the SEC. The difference isn't marginal. The Big Ten is getting $1 billion a year in TV revenue, and the SEC is getting $300 million a year. And the difference per team is roughly like $22 million. Oregon and but just to give you a rundown, Oregon and Washington agreed to join the Big Ten while taking less revenue from the TV payouts than the rest of the league. They're still bringing more than every SEC team. And I think it's like 12 million more for them. And so 22 million, we just talked, Ohio State just won a national championship and we called it the best team money could buy because they spent 20 million in NIL. Every Big Ten team now is about to have an Ohio State NIL budget more than the SEC, every SEC team on this TV revenue. And as you point out with the difference in contracts, the Big Ten is going to be able to renegotiate before the SEC can renegotiate.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing too. I think a lot of SEC teams could probably spend $20 million. It's what they choose to do. And there's going to be, it looks like, somewhat of a cap, right? On the revenue sharing, aren't they talking 20 to 22 million is what they're looking at revenue sharing with the House settlement? So it's not like you can all of a sudden, if you're a Big Ten team, decide I'm going to pay $50 million for these players.
You realize what we're going to get back to, don't you?
Collusion?
No, somebody is going to spend their $20 million, and then the new NCAA violation is going to be money spent over that. We're going to be right back.
Luxury tax.
Yes, we're going to be right back where we were with the Chick-fil-A bags with Jeremy Pruitt.
Well,
I hope I'm wrong, but I could see that if somebody needs an advantage. Oh, I got $5 million sitting over here. This booster just is dying to give to somebody. But I don't understand how you would do a salary cap with people like me. And my collective was very, very small. It was just Jacob Warren. It was just Cooper Mays. But how you could tell somebody that they couldn't go out and get that on their own. Now, with the money they get from the school, I get that. But that seems illegal to me.
What's illegal?
The fact that a young man can't go out and go on his own.
Did that person go? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying. That part's illegal. Yeah. I don't think you can put a cap on it necessarily. They will attempt to put a cap on it. The only way you can put a cap on it, which the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL has, is through collective bargaining. Collective bargaining typically would involve the student athletes becoming employees. But the student athletes at Tennessee that I talked to that were in the SEC Leadership Council, Jemai Mashak and Tamari Key, said they do not want to be employees of the university because their scholarship money gets taxed. So if your scholarship at Tennessee is $50,000, you're getting taxed 28% on $50,000. They don't want that. So they don't want to be employees.
And also, I mean, and just an interesting side to this, like even if they collectively bargain, I mean, we know this, NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL players, they can make whatever they want in endorsements on the side. I mean, heck, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but until his last 2 years with the Bulls, Michael Jordan was never one of the top 5 players in the NBA. He was making like $3 or $4 million a year, but it didn't matter because he was getting $1 billion from Nike. And like we know with the NIL, I mean, that's still endorsements. So Jimmy, where I come from on this is how that goes back to the Big Ten SEC contracts. Look, we know how much money schools solicit from donors to build whatever they need to build and do whatever they need to do. My argument is, yes, there may be a cap on what they can spend. But isn't it also true that, okay, well, if the schools now have $20 million more to spend on whatever they need to spend, that's $20 million extra that the donors have to just buy players through endorsement deals of some sort, rather than having to spend it on, endowing a business school or endowing a, new practice facility or something like that.
Yeah, but here's the other part of that. All right, let's say I'm a booster. I got $1 million. Am I going to give my $1 million to a collective, which keeps 10%, or am I going to give my $1 million straight to the athletic department? And then it's not only they don't take 10% out, but it's a tax write-off for me. So my point is, if there's a collective that's collecting $20 million, I don't think they're going to be collecting $20 million once the schools can directly pay the players, because most of the donations from the heavy hitters is going to go directly to the athletic department, not to the collective. That's my opinion going forward. So I think the collectives will be drastically reduced in the amount of money they can have for the, quote, outside endorsements, Caleb, that you're talking about.
Okay, so today's tough question is morphed a little bit, and I want to turn it into this. You guys think about it. It's gone all over the place. But the question I want to ask you both is, in 5 years, will we look at the Big Ten as being the preeminent conference like we've looked at the SEC for the past 20? Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones.
So given the revenue, Jimmy, let me ask you this. Will we look at the Big Ten as being the better conference at all by a long shot, or just maybe a little bit better? How do you see things shaking out? Because it's been all SEC for most of since I've known you.
Does the clock start right now? Because if you started it 2 years ago, I'm going to say Big Ten.
Right.
They got to jump Michigan, Ohio State. If the clock starts right now, I would bet you the SEC wins as many national championships as the Big Ten. And think about it. If Georgia had been in the playoff 2 years ago, I think they'd have beat Michigan. But they didn't get in because of a bizarre set of circumstances, with Texas beating Alabama, Alabama beating Georgia, etc. I thought Georgia was as good as anybody in the country. This past year, with Carson Beck, could Georgia beat Notre Dame? Probably. So I don't think the SEC, it's not like the Big Ten is just way, way better than the SEC, in my opinion. And I also think that Georgia wasn't as good as they had been. They were not as good as they had been in Kirby Smart's best years. Alabama certainly took a dip when Nick Saban left. But I think there are teams that will rise back to the occasion and be capable of winning a national championship. And so it's going to be good fortune. I mean, Georgia was unfortunate that they lost their quarterback. But if I had to bet over the next 5 years, I would bet you the SEC wins as many national championships as the Big Ten, which might be hard since it's 5 years and 2-2. And
Clemson's going to get one.
Yeah, huh?
Yeah, Clemson's going to get one.
Yeah, Brigham Young. Yeah. So, but and maybe it's 3-2 Big Ten, 3-2 SEC. I don't think there's going to be much difference in these conferences as far as winning national championships over the next 5 years. If you call it 6 years, I'm going to go 3-3.
All right, Caleb.
In 5 years, I'm with Jimmy. I think it'll be 50-50. I think the gap's going to really increase, though, if we go 10 years, particularly when that new Big Ten contract sets them after the NIL. Because I want to point this out, Jimmy, real quick. You are right. The difference between donating to a school versus endorsing a player, you can write off your donation to a school. I don't know, Dave, you might know, but I mean, technically, can't you write off an endorsement as a business expense to a certain degree?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there's that. So you can write off an endorsement as a business expense. And if it's not as much as to a school, let's just call it what it is, guys. the donors to all these schools across the country will just buy members of Congress to pass a tax law to let them write off things as endorsements because they control Congress.
Conspiracy, Caleb. I do think Jimmy's onto something, though. I think you get
it's a conspiracy to say big money runs our government.
Well, no, I think you get a bigger tax break as opposed to paying employees. I think you get a bigger, I'd have to look that up, but if you give it to a school or a charity, I think you get a bigger break than just a business expense.
Well, and not only that, remember, the collectives is taking 10% of that money. So if I'm donating to $1 million, I don't want 100,000 going to a collective. I want that going to the student athletes that I'm trying to support, right? So that's another part of this equation that I think. And here's the thing too about the endorsements: you don't have to have a collective to set up an endorsement, right?
Right.
You don't have to do that. You can go out on your own. You could go to a car dealership. You could go to a restaurant. You could go wherever and get that endorsement without the collective being involved to negotiate, right? But basically, I'm saying I think the collective's influence is going to be minimized a little bit with what's going on.
Well, that's what I mean, like that, which would still even further favor the Big Ten, because can't these donors then just say, I'm going to just endorse these players myself without the collective?
Sure.
And, I'll give Nico Amaliaba $2 million to ride on a plane and I'll have him endorse my plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. I looked into that. He's actually more expensive than that. Just for a podcast. All right, so I want to change gears here for a second. I know it was pretty. The number was stunning. I want to talk about spring games for a second because I got a real problem with spring games in that they're not games anymore, and I just wonder how long we continue this charade. I grew up in Knoxville. Going to a spring game was something you did because our family at a particular time didn't have a ton of money. We were able to afford that, and it was special. And I think they even had a fan day. Jimmy might correct me on that. They had a fan day where you could meet the players,
sign autographs. Yep.
Yeah, and just they have absolutely torn that anew. And I'm not ripping Tennessee. I'm just ripping college football in general. I don't know that it's fixable. I just throw it out to you, Jimmy. How would you fix a spring game?
I don't think you can. Coaches do not want to have a true spring game because they don't want to have people injured. When I go to a spring game, I watch to see individual players. I watch to see if a wide receiver can run a route, catch a football, or get open. I watch to see if a cornerback's got good hips. I watch to see an edge rusher. How quick is he off the ball? That's what I look at when I go to spring games. I could give a rat about whether the white beats the orange or the orange beats the white. I know people bet on that kind of stuff. I don't care. I go to look, and mostly I'm looking at new players. So, and I was wrong about this, but I looked at Chris Braswell. I thought, boy, that guy's going to make an impact. He got open. He caught the ball. He was open deep. Man, let's see what he can do. Well, he didn't do much. So, but I do go and look for that. I look for individuals, skill level, their performance, and that's it. But I wish they would get back to the days of like a fan day. But now you're going to have to pay these athletes to do that. They're not going to sign an autograph for free. Right?
Yeah, they're not. And they're probably not going to show up and play for free because you're not going to include that in a contract.
Well, that's part of practice,
I guess.
Yeah. You can't. No.
Okay.
Now I wouldn't go that far.
Let me throw a couple of things at you, and I want to find out if you're hot or cold on this. And it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. That's cityheatandair.com. So are you hot or cold on the concept of doing more like a skills challenge where players are less likely to get hurt and coaches don't worry about showing any of their super secretive scheme that only they know?
I'm cold on that. I'm not. I saw some of the skill challenges that they ran where some quarterback was trying to throw it in a bucket or some kicker was trying to kick it and hit an upright. Those things don't appeal to me. I just soon watch somebody try to make a half-court shot and win $15,000. Those don't appeal to me.
It doesn't do a lot for me either. Caleb?
Yeah, I'm cold on it too. And the last skills challenge I remember that Tennessee ran was Butch Jones's last spring game in 2017. How'd that season go?
That was the Peyton Manning rollout thing, wasn't it?
It showed that they didn't have skill, Caleb.
Okay, that's true.
Okay.
Well played.
Hot or cold on this, Jimmy? Tennessee should schedule, or all schools should schedule a team that they would regularly never play. I know they played Virginia Tech, but there is a little bit of a rivalry there in the Tri-Cities, or North Carolina, and they actually have a scrimmage. Hot or cold? You like that idea?
Yeah, I would prefer that in the spring. I would like to see that. Now, they're not going to agree to it because there's the risk of injury. I understand.
I know.
But from a fan's perspective, would I like to see that? Yes. If indeed they're going to play everybody. You know, I don't want them to go out there and watch a bunch of second, third stringers, a bunch of walk-ons play. So if they go out there and play and they give some effort, yes, I would like that. I'd be hot on that.
All right, Caleb, hot or cold?
The only reason I'm cold on that is I'd rather see that actually be played the first weekend of the regular season, which I don't know is going to happen now because of how the College Football Playoff Selection Committee behaved this past year. But I'd rather I thought about this recently. I just wanted to float this to you guys real quick. What if, like, at the start of every year, the first game every year was NFL scouts did mock draft, there was an official NFL scouts mock draft before the year. And the two teams with the most projected first round picks had to play each other the first weekend. Like, how epic. The reason I bring something up like that up is, like, you guys both remember the I've heard about it. Jimmy, you covered it. Dave, you were young, but I think you followed it. The 1990 Tennessee Notre Dame game.
Jimmy, that's what he did. He just aged us.
Well, no, I mean, like, the one game that I regret being too young for is the 1990 Tennessee Notre Dame game, which Andy Kelly lost with the late interception. But my understanding is that to this day stopped the college football world because of all the NFL talent that scouts wanted to see in the stadium that day.
It was a terrific football game. So was the next year, the Miracle at South Bend. But that was a fantastic game. Rocket Ishmael turned the corner, and he was a rocket when he did so. There was outstanding talent from Tennessee and for Notre Dame. And what you're talking about with Andy Kelly threw an end zone interception late in that game. That was a great game at Neyland Stadium with a ton of talent. You know, I'm all for that, and I don't know that you necessarily have to go with NFL scouts saying the teams with the most draft pick. I think. And I know it didn't turn out well, but I appreciated the fact that Florida played Miami early. I appreciate the fact that Georgia played Clemson early. I appreciate the fact that Texas went to Michigan and played them early in the season. And I know Wisconsin didn't end up that good, but at the time Alabama scheduled Wisconsin was a Big Ten contender. So I like those kinds of games. And now, would I prefer that to a spring game? Absolutely, I would prefer that. I didn't know that was one of my options.
Actually, it's funny you bring that game up, Caleb, because my stepdad Joe took me to that game, and I remember being in the end zone, and usually you don't want to be in the end zone. You want to be off to the side, but seeing Rocket hit that corner, and the whole time I thought to myself, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. He may make it. He may make it. Oh, he's going to make it. He's gone. And it was just like there was no way speed-wise he could get to the corner, but he did. It was bizarre. Hot or cold? Yes, hot or cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. I've got one last question I want to ask Jimmy about the spring game, and we'll do that after a brief message from City Heating and Air.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Jimmy, I believe I know where you stand on this. Charging for what they call a spring game, even 50 cents, is too much, in my opinion.
I'm not a big fan of charging for it. However, you're going to have to pay these student athletes, and I think Tennessee and other schools are going to do anything they can to generate revenue to help offset the money they're going to pay student athletes. So I'm not opposed to it anymore.
Okay, so
I used to be, but not now.
Okay, fair enough. Jimmy, fantastic appearance as always. We love having you on board. Brought to you in part by our friends at National Fitness Center, where you can watch Jimmy beat me at racquetball anytime he feels like it, because he can do it.
Hey, well, here's the thing. Instead of going to a spring game, you can watch me play you in racquetball.
Right. This is going to turn into a challenge, and I'm going to get embarrassed like when I bench pressed Caleb's weight. What was it, 15 times, Caleb?
Something like that, yeah.
All right, Jimmy, have a blessed day. We appreciate you more than you know.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all have a good day.
Thanks, buddy. I don't know if I could bench press Jimmy's weight quite as often. I think you guys probably weigh about the same.
Dave, I got a fun trivia for you.
This is where I separated my shoulder, by the way, but go ahead.
Oh, whiner. Here's a genuine trivia question. Of the 44 starters in the 1990 Tennessee Notre Dame game, how many were taken in the next 2 years of the NFL draft?
Any round? That was when they went 12 rounds, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's called the tease, kids. Because I want to hear this number. The UPS store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. And the link is right down below. The UPS store, Hardin Valley. It is run by fantastic Tennessee fans. You may remember David Douglas. They are one incredible family. So I'm excited to hear what Caleb has to say. I'm also excited to drive off in my new Bronco here momentarily. I'll tell you more about that. Man, you absolutely have to go to Ted Russell Ford Lincoln if you're thinking about buying a vehicle. The finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. They're unbelievable. Andy and Nick White will have you taken care of, and the selection is unbelievable. Kingston Pike, Parkside Drive. After one meeting, you'll know that you're dealing with great people, and they support the community. It's more than just selling cars to them. They're a member of this community, and they're just fantastic people. I can't wait to hop in my new Bronco, and I'd already have it, but my insurance company is taking forever. I won't name them, but my insurance company is taking forever to give me a check on my car that got a little banged up. All right, so he's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Coming up, he's going to have that number for us. Again, repeat it because it's pretty good.
How many of the 44 starters between Tennessee and Notre Dame in that 1990 game ended up being selected over the next 2 years in the NFL draft?
I'm going to put the over under 28 and a half, but we'll get to that. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Hey, Ted, it's time to save some cash during New Year's Bash.
Savings is my prime directive. Let's see what you got, Nick.
Right now, you can save up to $10,000 on new Ford F-150s. Beat that, Ted.
Most impressive, but how about 0% for 72 months on Ford Lightning or Ford Mustang Mach-E?
Ted Russell Ford has huge savings on whatever you're looking for.
This checks out.
Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping
frank, like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, I believe we have a new, Timothy pitched in, or play a UTC ETSU for a spring game. I'd be okay with that, because that way you wouldn't play a North Carolina or a Virginia Tech that you would want to play your better players because you wouldn't want to get embarrassed. So I could kind of get that. I would be cool with that. I like keeping the money in-house as well. All right, so Caleb, you had a very interesting question earlier that I wanted to get to. So I was at that Notre Dame game. Was at 90, and then the
1990,
and then the Miracle at South Bend was at 91. So that is the greatest, that 1990 game, the greatest collection of talent I've ever seen. Maybe with the exception of the Miami game that was down there in the Orange Bowl with Vince Wilfork and I'm a Soldier guy. So how many of those guys were selected in the? You're smiling. You're too excited about this.
No. It's because you brought the Miami game. I feel like the greatest. This is collection of talent going against each other, because the greatest collection of talent you ever witness is just the 2001 Miami team by itself outweighs any collection of talent going head to head, because the NFL talent on that team is insane. But this game,
Tennessee wasn't chopped liver either.
No, they were not. They were not. And actually, had Tennessee played Miami for the national title in 2001, as they should have, because they blew it against LSU. Had they played Miami for the title in 2001, that would have been the greatest collection of talent on the field in the history of college football.
I feel like Ken Dorsey was just kind of. You remember back in the space days when they would shoot monkeys up into the stratosphere? Well, he's really just along for the ride. He's not pressing any buttons. He's just
But there's an argument that Andy Kelly was along for the ride on this 1990 team, though, that we're talking about.
Oh, well, no, there's no question about that. I mean, when you want to compare talent-wise, no, he had a fantastic arena career, but we're not talking about one of the great NFL players. I think he would even agree to that. He's told me before, he said there was an obvious step up in talent after I was done. I mean, that's just a fact. Andy Kelly was a very good game manager, and I appreciated what he did, but no, he's not at the level of
He did set the standard for quarterback play at Tennessee in the 90s. But it's kind of the guy who sets the standard, but then the other talent comes in and takes it to like a whole nother level.
Right. So do want to mention really quick, if I may, Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. Also, I'll remind everybody that if you join the YouTube channel, you will receive your choice of the following prizes: Celebrating 98 book, a Hooker t-shirt, which are kind of going out of style, so you'll probably want something else. And lastly, or firstly, depending on how you look at it, a gift certificate to Hound Dogs of Knoxville. You can shop online, hdknoxville.com. So if you're a member, all you have to do is join and then email me. The only bad part about YouTube, it's sometimes incredibly difficult to get a hold of one another. So I will put my email in the chat while our buddy Caleb shares some pretty strong info here. So give me that stat again, that 1990 Tennessee Notre Dame teams.
Okay, 1990 Tennessee Notre Dame. How many players from the 44-man starting lineups on offense and defense, of the 44 offensive and defensive starters, how many found their way into the NFL draft over the next 2 years? And they set the over-under at 28.5.
It's higher than that, because they had a 12 team 12 round draft. I'm going to say 38.
Oh, now you shot a little bit high, but it's 35. Okay. It's 35 out of 44. Insane. There were 7 Pro Bowlers on those two teams going, on those starting lineups. 7. Guys, that's That was from my understanding, I'll just say this. I've heard through a lot of journalism stuff we say sometimes, Dave, and you know this. There's things you won't report that you kind of know to be true because you hear through the grapevine, but you can't report it because you can't say it to be fully true. You know what I'm saying? Even though,
yeah, which we hint at. We'll tell you, Eckler left because he wanted to be closer. I mean,
right.
But,
I got one on those because I heard this through the grapevine when I was in Knoxville at the time, and there's people I've spoken with since I've been covering Tennessee that adjusted for inflation. That was the highest scalped ticket in regular season college football history. That 1990 Tennessee Notre Dame.
Wow! So you know that, or are you kind of just throwing that out there?
It is a kind of hear through the grapevine from important people tied to the university at the time. But put it this way. NFL scouts were scalping tickets because they couldn't get into that game.
Now, I did hear that. Joe Newbert Collision Center for nearly 50 years. Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNewbertCollision.com. JoeNewbertCollision.com. Before we get to Tennessee's basketball players get to play for money, it seems like gambling to me, but I guess it's not. If you win, you get a bunch of NIL cash. If you don't, you get to go home with a box of Triscuits, like on The Price is Right. So before we get to that, this day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by our friends at peakivhydration.com. This day in Tennessee sports history is right now on Off the Hook Sports.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, it's brought to you by Peak IV Hydration, South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live life to your fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration, peakivhydration.com. Caleb, this day in Tennessee sports history is what?
On this day, 33 years ago.
33 years ago. I was just 3 years old.
Wade Houston took a break from his daytime soap operas.
Oh, man.
And helped Tennessee, unranked Tennessee, shock fifth-ranked Arkansas 83-81 in Thompson Bowling Arena. I think so 26 points from Allen Houston and 26 points from Lane Wiseman. They both had 26 points apiece. And Wade Houston helped Tennessee upset Arkansas 83-81. That team was the best team Wade Houston ever had. Went 19-15 and 8-8 in the SEC. What's significant about that, Dave, is there's actually a tie. You ready for the tie a little bit?
I'm ready for the tie a lot.
It's kind of I wanted to do a little bit of a Black History Month segment here because there is a bit. The Arkansas, this was their first year in the SEC. Wade Houston was the first Black coach in the SEC.
Which is insane that took to the 80s. I mean,
it's insane that it took to the 80s, and it's a shame that Wade Houston had to be the first because of how bad of a coach he was. But luckily, Nolan Richardson, with Arkansas joining the SEC later on, helped actually was able to carry the torch in a much better way. But this was Arkansas's first year in the SEC, which is kind of intriguing. So Wade Houston gets the best of Nolan Richardson his first year in the SEC. Ain't nobody in the world going to say Wade Houston was a better coach than Nolan Richardson.
No. Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Stop by and tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports said hello. I cannot get over just a dirty feeling that I get when that I get when I talk about that Tennessee will be in this Eras game, the Era Festival. And I heard about this from actually the gentleman who does most of the basketball courts you'll see. He does all of the NBA courts. He does the alternate ones where they have the in-game tournament. His name's Prater Flooring. He's out of Chattanooga. He does all of them. So I first heard of this. I think I brought it up to you about 6 months ago, that they were going to have a game in which the winner gets a big pile of NIL cash and the loser gets like a thigh master that they can take home and work out with. So Caleb, how exactly does this work? Is this good for the competition, or is this we're just playing about money stuff?
I mean, put it this way, puts a hell of an incentive on you to win an early season tournament game. I mean, how often do you see, like, I love one of the most underrated things about college basketball that I love, and it's what makes Thanksgiving week my favorite week of the year in sports, because you're in the heart of college football. The regular season's winding down. You've got those great NFL games on Thursday when we get to see Dave's Cowboys always somehow mess up. And you've got, but then on top of that, you always have those college basketball early season tournaments, right? And how much fun is it to just casually watch those games? They're always involving top 10, top 15 teams. But the problem with those games is, how often are you seeing coaches experiment during that time? Because it's early. They want to figure some things out. Man, this is great. There ain't going to be no experimenting from the coaches in this tournament. They're going to be trying to win, and they're going to be competitive. Because the payouts, now everybody gets paid from playing in this, everybody. And everybody plays 3 games. You have losers brackets and things like that. But the payouts go up based on whether or not you win. And this is in Vegas, so of course this is going to happen. It's Vegas, baby. And I just think that this is, Thanksgiving week in Vegas. First of all, if you were covering Tennessee basketball, if you're their beat reporter for the Knoxville News Sentinel, how epic is this? They fly you to Vegas for the week of Thanksgiving to cover this crazy, awesome tournament.
I've had my Vegas. I want no part of that. I would rather be at home eating turkey. But if you see guys go out there and play harder, and the next game, let's say Tennessee plays Wisconsin. Okay, they play in this Ayers tournament. They go out and they play hard, but then against Wisconsin, they lay an egg. That to me just kind of cheapens the whole sport and the competition of it. You should go out there wanting to win because you're a competitor, not because there's a little bit of cash at stake. Do you not find that troublesome?
This is the NIL age. Hey, wait a minute. There's bonuses for players who win the Super Bowl. The NFL gives them extra money.
Yeah, but we're not talking. This is mega bucks. How many millions does the winner get?
I believe, let's see, Players Festival winner gets $9 million, I believe.
Okay, so $9 million among 12 scholarship dudes.
That's kind of freaking awesome. You basically have a national title team to buy.
I know. That's almost $1 million a piece. And
love it.
Well, no, but the incentives you're talking about in the NFL are like $50,000. They're basically minuscule compared to the money they're making. So I don't think that's a fair comparison. No offense.
I love this. It's going to make for so much. Look, this tournament is going to be bigger than any conference regular season game that those kids are going to play that year. My problem with these early season tournaments is I feel like there's too much experimentation going on. I think, hot take, here we go. You ready for this, Dave?
I'm ready.
They should make the conference tournaments in March to be out like this. Then you won't see teams doing what I suggested Tennessee do last year, and I suggest they do this year, and what they did do last year.
Okay, so
you promise a payout. I think there should be more of this. I think the Players Era tournament is just a start. I think the conferences should be promising certain payouts for teams that win their conference tournaments. Yeah, no, I'm all for it.
Okay, here's what I'm going to put on my YouTube page: pay for play. And I'll revisit the last one, but pay for play. No, play for winning or pay for winning, I should say. I love it. It cheapens the sport. Those are your two options. I love it, or it cheapens the sport. You can vote now, so go ahead and put that up there. Thank you very much for those that are already saying cheapen the sport, because I don't know how you can be a fan of a team that this sounds like something that would happen in the Jerry Green era. They would go out there and play hard and win their millions and then say, oh, well, got to go back to the SEC slate and it's time to drop about 8 games and stumble into the NCAA tournament. That's what this sounds like. And so you watch them at the beginning of the year and you think they're that great because they played that hard. Do you really believe that most of the players will play significantly harder just because of the cash that's out there?
You damn well know that those players under Jerry Green would not play smart enough to win 3 games in 3 days against this level of
But
competition.
they were so talented at times, they didn't have to play smart.
Yeah, but when you play this amount of talent that they're playing, and I will say this one thing in Jerry Green's favor. Look at the NBA production from those teams. They're not as talented as Tennessee fans like to retroactively say they were. I mean, Tony Harris was never an NBA player. Isaiah Victor was never an NBA player. CJ Black. The only NBA players from those teams were Marcus Haislip and Vincent Yarbrough, and both were out of the league within a couple of years. So,
well, Yarbrough was pretty good for a while. Haislip was drafted incredibly high because of his strength
and athleticism.
Let's put it this way. Remember they told us he could bench 425 pounds.
Oh, I just heard he had like a vertical that was better than Michael Jordan's. I didn't know he could bench.
I still don't believe that. As a matter of fact, I told the sports information director, I said, I want to go see it. And he goes, oh, no, you can't go see it. I said, there's no, when you have arms that long, I have long arms, benching's hard. And there's no way that he got up 425 pounds. I just don't believe that. Do you think most players would truly play harder because there's cash on the line? Or do you think they're true competitors?
I think most players are true competitors. I think this could actually lead to some sloppy play from players who do play harder because they'll start to put pressure on themselves. Now, okay. One, let's talk about what this means for Tennessee real quick because we haven't really talked about what this means for Tennessee because, Dave, they're going to be in this, I think, for the next 3 years. So this is how do you get selected for this? This is Rick Barnes. Everybody needs to bow down to Rick Barnes because he has such connections. He's one of the few coaches that could make sure Tennessee gets in this. Because, Dave, you just brought up the Jerry Green era. If Buzz Peterson was at Tennessee, there's no way in hell Tennessee's getting selected to play in this, right?
I don't know. He had an exciting team. I always thought they got more.
Buzz Peterson?
Nerved. Well, no.
Buzz Peterson? Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, Vegas, they want to see Buzz ball. They really want to see some Buzz ball. Buzz was still stuck in like the 4 corners that Dean Smith was running back in the day. He basically ran that at Tennessee.
Oh, you're forgetting how bad Kevin O'Neal was. I mean, that was another.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Would they pick Kevin O'Neal? So I think this
we won 44-42. Yay!
Here's what I think you should do with this. And I'm just spitballing in my head because I do love things to give players. It's not about giving the players incentive to win, Dave. It's about giving the coaches incentive to win. And hear me out on this. Like I said, the coaches in these preseason tournaments as of recent years have done nothing but experiment, and it hasn't been as fun to watch. The coaches ain't going to experiment anymore because you tell a coach, you win, I'm giving you $9 million to buy whatever team you want next year. Oh, that coach is going to try to win at that point.
So help me. Does the money go directly to the players or directly to the coach? Perhaps you can help me with that because I may be a little bit confused. Portions of the program brought to you by our fantastic friends at Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
So, Caleb, does it go to the current players that are in the game, or does it go to the future of the NIL endeavor at that particular school?
Okay, Dave, you asked a very good question, and you were right to ask it because it changes my thought. It goes all to the current players in the game, pretty much, not future NIL endeavors. Here's what I think you should do to give everybody an incentive. You should split it. $4.5 million to be divided among the players, and $4.5 million to the future NIL endeavors of the school. And
Bruce Pearl should have split his buyout with his assistants, but he didn't do that.
Right. But what I'm saying is, okay, I'll give you an example. I just fixed the issue of college football of the SEC championship being meaningless. What if
I knew you were going to go there?
Yes, I fixed it. What if the SEC promised $12 million for the win, or $20 million to the winner of the SEC title game? To be half of that money is divided amongst the football team. The other half goes to the team's future NIL fund. Man, you are going to see people really care about that SEC championship game.
Okay.
after that.
I want to take out the SEC championship game because I think it's meaningful anyway. But what I want to address,
No, it's not.
It's okay. Maybe it's not. But what I want to address is this eras thing. Okay, because I see a real rub coming between coaches and players. Because if I'm a coach, Caleb, I am going to still want to experiment. I'm still going to want to learn about my team. And the players are not going to want to hear any of that. They're going to want to go out there and win. You could create a rub between the coaches and the players. The coaches thinking long-term, make the NCAA tournament, make the Final Four. You know, there are times in baseball that you have to rest a guy in June so that he's good to go in October. And I think that's where, to some extent, Tennessee's or whoever plays in these things, they will be like that. The coaches still want to achieve their goals of learning about their team and getting better. Well, what do the players want to do? They just want to get that ATM card. That's what they're worried about.
You got a whole December to experiment. You play tough teams in December. You got a January to experiment. I mean, January was experimentation. SEC play is how Tennessee basketball had to experiment this year because, as Steve Hamer pointed out yesterday, through no fault of their own, they weren't adequately prepared for SEC play because their non-conference schedule was much easier than they thought it would be. It's not their fault. They tried to schedule hard. A bunch of teams just ended up massively underachieving. But, you know, you say this like they can't schedule tough teams in December. I mean, you can. Typically, the way college basketball works, tell me if I'm right on this, Dave. The way college basketball works in non-conference play, tell me if I'm right on the numbers. You play some preseason tournament where you're playing 2 to 3 really good quality teams, right?
Yeah.
And a neutral group. And then don't you usually schedule maybe 4 big name teams beyond that for November and December for non-conference play, like 2 at home and 2 on the road?
Yeah,
So,
maybe
like,
oversimplifying it a little bit, but I see where you're going.
work on it those 4 games. I want to see when it's Thanksgiving week. This is what I mean on this. This is happening Thanksgiving week. I want everything about Thanksgiving week sports to be the most intense week of sports of the year. It's my favorite sports week of the year. I love Thanksgiving week sports. I love the preseason tournaments in basketball. I love NFL Thursdays on Thanksgiving. I love the Egg Bowl being on Thursday night. And it was a travesty that they moved it to Friday. Another reason Greg Sankey is a terrible commissioner. And I love the fact that it's the last weekend of the regular season in college football with massive implications. Okay. It's like Thanksgiving week is the best week in sports, and they just enhanced it by 30-fold with a Players Festival tournament that's going to get them paid $9 million if they win. I'm loving this, man. I'm loving this. And by the way, I get what I thought about this. They took away the incentive for the coach to try to win because the coach could still do experimentation theoretically. But if the players get whined that the coach is sacrificing the Players Festival to like sacrificing their $9 million to like experiment in this tournament and not try to win it, how do you think they're going to take that?
Yeah, not good. Not well.
I mean,
not well. Pay for winning is our poll question. I love it. It sickens me. And I'm going to have to go with it sickens me. Just, you should want to go out there and compete.
And as we know, oftentimes teams lose games because players screw up. Man, if a player screws up in this player's, I mean,
oh man, like all his teammates are going to hate his guts
for the rest of the season. Like if Zakai Ziegler misses a game-winning layup or Chaz Lanier misses a game-winning layup.
This is one big.
I mean, I like the messiness. I love the messiness of college sports and just sports in general. Sometimes bring it on, man. I want to see it. Okay. Dave, just so you know, I'm the type of person, I was addicted to the Shaq Kobe feud in the early 2000s with the Lakers. I wanted to see what they were going to say about each other next while they were playing on the same team. I'm the guy that likes seeing Ron Artest go into the fans and beat the hell out of the fans.
It's kind of hard to top when Kobe says, "Oh, can I just pay her $100,000 like Shaq does?" I mean, that was
legendary. That was the stuff of legend.
You don't come back from that because you're accusing somebody else of paying off a woman that you may have done something bad with, and it's not your wife. There was just no coming back from that.
I love it. Inject that. But see, I this is why I sometimes like reality show, and I know a lot of it's fake, but like reality TV, I like a little messiness. And it's fun when it reaches the sports world. I don't want to see a bunch of robots going onto the court. We play sports to win. we just focus on winning. No, I want to see some color, man. I want to see Richard Sherman like talking trash about Michael Crabtree right after he like makes the game-saving interception to beat the 49ers and he trashes Crabtree's play. That was epic.
I think we added a new voice there. And I've got this new filter thing that I've been trying to play with. I can't get it to work, but we'll move on. What the H? And it's brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
What the H?
Wow, I've never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Okay, before you read this column that we're going to dive into, which throws some shade, in my opinion, at Josh Heupel, if you were to make a list of coaches that you believe will eventually win their first championship, so we're taking out the Days of the world, we're taking out the Kirby Smarts of the world that have already won one, who would you point to, and how many coaches would you point to that will win a championship, in your opinion, before their careers are done? I'll ask you that, Caleb, and then we'll make it something. Poll question brought to you by our fantastic friends, and as I can pull that up, at Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates, facebook.com, Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN. Caleb, how many coaches would you say are out there? I would say 5 to 7 that I think at some point, I got Sark, I got Heupel, at least I would have Heupel. But I think there's about 5 to 7 out there that I think will win a championship at some point.
Yeah, Sark, I'm with you. I think definitely Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. Even if he doesn't meet Nick Saban's level, like he's definitely capable of at least being Gene Stallings at that point.
Yeah, to me personally, he seems like a knock on the door guy for a long time, which could get frustrating for Alabama fans, but it wouldn't surprise me if he won one.
Right. And sometimes sometimes let's point this out. I think coaches get punished sometimes for knocking on the door too much when they don't realize there's like another layer of luck that pushes you over through to get to to win the national title. I mean, Steve Spurrier had to luck into his one national title, and then he knocked on the door every other year, but I don't think any of us thought he was a bad coach for that. And how long was Bobby Bowden knocking on the door before he got his first in 93? I mean,
a long time.
Yeah. And Tom Osborne. I mean, so I think that like, I if you can knock on the door, I think you can win it. So I'd go Sark just because of where he is at Texas, and Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. I mean, I don't want to short sell Marcus Freeman because he was just in the game, and they put up a fight late. And I do think Notre Dame is better equipped for this era of college football, because I don't think the academic requirements will work against them as much as they have in the past because of how spread out the talent is.
So how many coaches you got?
And then there's Heupel. Brian Kelly. I still think Brian Kelly can win a national title.
That's true. It almost feels like he has, but he hasn't.
But he hasn't, yeah. 5. I think. And then because of the era of college football, that I think there's coaches I'm not thinking of that could do it. So I'm going all the way up to 10. I'm actually going all the way up to 10. I think there's 5 coaches I'm not even thinking about that could win a national title.
Yeah, and normally, like before the NIL and transfer portal, I would say, no, you got your 5, and that's all there needs to be. But nowadays, with the way I think the whole playing field is going to be leveled, you will see some guys win that probably wouldn't in the previous era. So this gets back to Josh Heupel not getting a little bit of love. Our poll question is, how confident are you that Josh Heupel will win a natty? Very, somewhat, not at all. So far, a lot of not at alls, but we'll get to that. So, Caleb, who threw shade at Josh Heupel, and why would they do such a thing?
So mean. Chip Patterson of CBS last week wrote an article on who will be the next head coach to win his first national title. Some of the names we mentioned. Steve Sarkisian was on there. Okay. Marcus Freeman. Okay, he was just in the game. Dan Lanning. All right. I mean, Dan Lanning did go undefeated.
But if I ask you to, I want to go back for a second. If I ask you to bet whether or not Heupel or Freeman wins a championship, but you had to bet a mortgage payment, I'm taking Heupel. I thought that team lucked into
the hard part. As the independent and in the NIL age, do you realize how much money Notre Dame has to buy a championship?
Well, that's true. And I think something like that's going to happen with Vanderbilt. Call them coming. All right. Who else?
All right. So Dan Lanning, I get it. Dan Lanning had Oregon at #1 the whole year and undefeated. So I get Oregon has never won one and they always flame out in postseason play, but that doesn't mean Dan Lanning can't do it. And then Brian Kelly and Kalen DeBoer. But Josh Heupel wasn't on the list. And there's a couple of names that were on the list that I think is going to make Dave's head explode.
Okay. I'm surprised that Heupel's not on the list. I mean, because of his youth, I just wonder how much they're holding last year against him when, again, Nico plays much better if he has more protection at the tackle spot. But
well, let's be honest. And I'll get to talking about Heupel, but I first want to talk about this list. So 2 other names on this list real quick. James Franklin.
James Franklin's not going to win a championship. You can just go ahead and move on. That's not going to happen. No chance, no way, no how.
And then this is really going to make Dave's head explode. Sharon Moore, who just went 7-5.
Yeah. How's Sharon Moore on there? Did you have a vote in this?
No, I did not have a vote in this. You think I would have selected Sharon Moore over Josh Heupel?
Love Sharon Moore. You're like, he's the next Philip Fulmer. You said that.
Yes, an offensive lineman who was a coordinator filling in for the head coach being out and winning all the big games and then getting promoted to head coach. That's literally what happened with Philip Fulmer.
Well, yeah, but Philip coached a decade almost before he slipped to 7-5. Sharon Moore should not be on there. The fact that he's on there instead of Josh Heupel that makes the whole list a travesty.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I agree. It's absolutely insane. Also, the overreaction to we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. People are losing so much perspective on Tennessee's season last year. It's actually mind-boggling. They technically exceeded expectations, guys. If you look at where they were ranked, where they were projected to go, and their projected record during the season, they were projected to go 9-3. They went 10-2. They were projected to just miss the college football playoff. They made it. They lost a blow. All their last memory is that blowout loss in the national title or in the college football playoff on the road against the team that won the national title and blew out everybody. Here's what's really sticking in people's head, Dave. You know what I think it is?
Lay it on me.
They're disappointed by how Tennessee won because they had it in their head of how they're supposed to win under Josh Heupel, which is the 2022 Hendon Hooker offense.
Right. And I think that's unfair. It just doesn't matter to me if you win 17-14 or you win 70-12. I mean, that makes no difference to me. And as a matter of fact, some of the best coach games I've ever seen, we just brought Miami up, was when Tennessee played a Miami and they had the end around to Corey Fleming. I mean, that game was what, 10-6?
Yeah, 10-6. 10-6. And that was, I mean, it showed how little respect Fulmer had for Larry Coker as a coach, because Phil Fulmer was basically like, if I stay conservative the whole game, Larry Coker his team is so undisciplined, they'll give us the game.
Well, I thought that was the second best game that Philip Fulmer ever oversaw. I think number 1 was the 2001 Tennessee-Florida game. But I thought the Miami one was the second best coach game of his career.
I might go 1 with Miami. Because, look, the 2001 Tennessee was actually more talented than Florida. So you could see why they handled that one easily. But Miami was significantly more talented than Tennessee. I mean, significantly more talented than Tennessee. If you look at the NFL, there was a big gap in talent. And so for Tennessee to win that game, and Miami was just coming off a loss. And so I might go Miami even more than that. Another one is the next year when Tennessee went to Athens with Eric Ainge as a freshman and beat Georgia, a better Georgia team. Remember that one?
Yep.
But yeah, so I mean, I guess getting back to it, you're right. There's ways that there's a lot of national title teams that win unconvincingly, but it works against them. Remember when Alabama, I guess it was 2015, won the national title when they had become a more up-tempo offense with Lane Kiffin at that point, and they go win the national title. It seemed like people were thinking Saban was on his last leg because they're like, oh, his defense isn't what it used to be, even though he just won a national title. And it's like, no, he's fine. He's just changed how he wins games now because his perception is offense or defense.
Do me a favor. Take 1 second and click that thumbs up button. We want to bring more people into the program. And Caleb, if you can give us an update on the poll question, that would be absolutely fantastic. Brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com.
So the poll question is, how confident are you that Josh Heupel will win a natty? Very somewhat not at all. You want the results now, or are we teasing?
You lay it on me. We've teased it.
And I know hookers love being teased, so I just have to. Or no, they do the teasing usually because
I don't.
Anyways,
I don't understand how that dynamic works.
Somewhat is leading by a plurality at 46%. Very is second. Very is at 23%. So 79% say very or somewhat. But there is a I'm sorry, 69%. Excuse me, 69% say that. But there is a 31% that says not at all. That they got no faith in Josh Heupel.
Can't believe you just passed up a joke on a 69%.
Dave, I'm a family man, okay?
Yeah. All right. It is time for the stat of the day. Stat of the day is right now. Caleb brings you the stat of the day each and every day. And I'll be honest with you, I thought they might be good, but they're even better than that. He's absolutely crushing the stat of the day. It's brought to you today by Work Trucks. I feel quite confident this is not the correct stat of the day. All right, so let's see if we can get that going again. Stat of the day is brought to you by our friends at Work Trucks. Stat of the day is now.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
What do we got for the stat of the day, Caleb?
Man, that's like my millennial club days, that DJ music. My whole life is chasing the high that I felt when I first heard Avicii's Levels in 2011 at a DC nightclub. Just that music just hit me. Rest in peace, Avicii.
That means, but what do you got?
All right, so Tennessee is 7-1 with their win over Florida last weekend. And I keep doing that one for stat of the day because there's just so many stats that come out of it that's insane. They are 7-1 all time now, Dave, in AP top 10 games at home, where both teams are in the top 10. More importantly, they're 4-0 under Rick Barnes. And when they're a top 10 team, hosting a top 10 team, they're undefeated under Rick Barnes.
It's a pretty good stat. Not a bad stat. I might be able to do better than that, though. I think I
already won today when I gave you the NFL players from the Tennessee Notre Dame game.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But as far as stat of the day, it is National Radio Day. How about that? Huh?
Okay.
Yeah, I've got really no stat for that. But you can tune into YouTube each and every weekday at 10 a.m. where we're live. All right, coming up on the program, we're going to get to a couple of different topics that I've been wanting to touch base on this for a bit. And Caleb, I'm having trouble pulling my thing up there. Having all kinds of fun computer issues. Caleb and I both are. It's been one of those days. I'll tell you what, you tell me what's coming up next. You got the rundown there, and I've got screens that won't close all of a sudden.
Yes, we're going to talk about Onis Kanubani flipping from Tennessee to Florida, and also why Tennessee got, if it's a big deal or no big deal, that Tennessee got the worst transfer portal grade in the SEC.
Yeah, and you're going to be way too optimistic on that. Just say everything's cool. I'm so excited to go down and pick up my Bronco a little bit later this week. It's going to be fantastic, and I know that I'll get a great deal because it is at our fantastic friends at Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. And Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is the largest volume dealer of Fords and Lincolns in the East Tennessee area. So you know you're going to get a fantastic selection and fantastic prices as well. I'm so excited. Proud members of the community. I'm very very blessed to be able to work with Andy and Nick White and all the guys. We love them. 2 minutes, and then coming up, Onis Kanambeni. I just love saying the name. Is it a big deal that he's flipped? And also, why Tennessee's transfer portal grade is not overwhelmingly good. In fact, it's overwhelmingly poor. Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Well, Ted, looks like you're settling right into your new space.
Affirmative. Powered by the new Ford Lightning.
You know, that would be incredible for camping, tailgating. The options are unlimited. Why don't you take a little power for yourself, buddy?
Beep boop beep bop.
Get into this new 2024 Ford F-150 Power Boost for only $53,300, or get 0% for 72 months on a Ford F-150 Lightning. Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
Like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and tedrusselllincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, he's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Rookie mistake because I had my mic muted. Show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. I'll tell you something about Mr. T. Scott Jones at Banks & Jones. He will go to trial for you. And I've known personal injury attorneys in the past. They're like, man, I go to trial, I'll lose money. It's better to settle. You spend less time. That's not what T. Scott Jones is about, Banks & Jones, and he's a fantastic member of the community. I can't tell you how many times he's helping those that find themselves in a rough situation at 5, 6 in the morning. He can be at a prison visiting with people trying to help them out that have found themselves in a tough situation. Just a fantastic guy. Very blessed to have him as part of the program. All right, Caleb Calhoun. So where are we going? Because I'm still having my computer issues that I'm trying to get through. So what are we doing here?
I'm about to go to the portal, but I got to ask you if you we should do this poll just randomly, agree or disagree, because Barstool SEC just responded to a JD Pickle tweet, and it's sparking debate. And I just want to know your thoughts, just real quick. Ready?
I don't know. Can I ask a question real quick before we get to that?
Sure.
Would you rather your last name be Pickle or Hooker?
Man, that's a real pickle.
Oh,
man.
It's Hooker, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd rather be Hooker.
Okay,
all right,
so what's the debate? And that'll be our poll question. By the way, how confident are you that Josh Heupel will win a natty? Somewhat 44%, Barry 27%, not at all 27%. All right, so our new poll question is going to be, would you rather your last name be Pickle or Hooker? Or Hooker Pickle?
Well, JD Pickle just said, hit me with your most unpopular college football take. And Barstool SEC responds and says this: college football is less about winning the natty and more about making sure your biggest rival is more miserable than you are at all times.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. I mean, I don't understand the point of that. What's
but
that?
You know there's a lot of people who think that way, right? There's
yeah,
a lot of people that are like...
Is that an Ohio State, Michigan reference, basically?
Somewhat, yes.
So Michigan had a good season because they beat their rival.
Have you seen Michigan Twitter versus Ohio State Twitter? Michigan just trolls them all the time for beating them. And Ohio State, if you're Ohio State, you should be like, who cares who won the natty? No, they keep going down these rabbit holes and fighting the Michigan fans out of anger. They are clearly more angry that they lost to Michigan, even after winning the natty.
Okay. I'm putting it up right now. Pickle Hooker is the name. Puckering is. All right, so that's going to be our poll question. I'm going to put that up there right now if my computer will ever work. Which last name would you prefer? Where do you think this is going to go? I really don't know.
I think since your last name's Hooker, everybody's going to prefer Pickle just to troll you.
I don't know. Let's see. All right, so Onus Konanbanny. I just love saying his name. He's not going to be a Vol. People were excited about him when he signed up with Tennessee, but that's not going to happen. Now, this isn't any sort of surprise whatsoever, but the fact that he's going to Florida, I think should make not only Tennessee fans worry, but fans around the conference, because I don't know that Billy Napier is smart enough to win a championship, but I think he's detail-oriented enough. And I do mean this, now that they've got their NIL put together. I think he's smart enough to assemble talent. We saw Ron Zook do that, and it worked out for the next guy. We've seen other coaches do that at other schools, and it's worked out for them. We mentioned Miami. Obviously, Larry Coker didn't assemble that talent. So how concerned do you think SEC fans should be that Florida is showing signs of life when it looked like the NIL was going to be the death of them?
I think very concerned. Florida has some real advantages right now that I don't think we're catching on to. The first is that, let's just talk about on the field, Dave. They were, in case everybody forgot, they were dead in the water at last year. They were 4-5 in the middle of November with 2 ranked teams left on their schedule. A winning season just wasn't possible. And they upset LSU and upset Ole Miss when Ole Miss was still in the college football playoff race.
See, I think they were even lower than that. I go back to the Jaden Rashada thing. That was so embarrassing. That's worse than a losing season. Because a losing season you can bounce back from, and you can go to a recruit and you can say you're going to play right away because we need you. But when you can't figure out ways to pay players and you promise them money, that's not good. That is very bad.
You are right. That's horrible. And it looks awful. And as Jimmy Hyams was on our show in November, and I think it was before it went down to 4-5, and he said at one point, and I agreed with him, I said the same thing. We were all like, man, Jeremy Foley would have fired Billy Napier by now. And then Billy Napier turns it around and finishes 8-5. So that happens. How does he finish 8-5? He finds his quarterback, DJ Lagway, who is probably the best quarterback he's had since he's been at Florida. Better than Anthony Richardson, because Anthony Richardson was massively overrated, and I think Colts fans are learning that. And better than Graham Mertz. So he's got his quarterback back for next year. And now Florida is recruiting at a very high level. Florida finished, their recruiting class finished number 8 with Onus Konanbanny, whereas Tennessee is on entering signing day today, that is, and assuming there's no real changes because signing day isn't what we thought, what it used to be. Tennessee is now out of the top 10 and going to finish number 11. Here's why that's significant. The difference is on the margins between Tennessee and Florida, 11-8. It's very close. However, Tennessee fell behind 2 other SEC schools in Texas A&M and LSU. Now, on paper, Dave, you would say, well, I mean, technically in the past, Tennessee hasn't really competed with LSU, Texas A&M, or Florida for recruits. But see, that's a little different to this day and age in the NIL. I think you expand your reach a little bit more broadly. And so I do think you're competing more for similar recruits. With all this in mind, losing Otis Konenbeny, even though you know you were going to lose him, is a big concern. And I think if you're Tennessee, for the foreseeable future, at least, you're playing Florida annually. And when you were light years ahead of Florida just the last couple of years, you needed overtime to beat them this past year. You lost to them in Gainesville 2 years ago. And a year before that, it came down to a final play when you were 11-2 and they were 6-7. And so there's an issue here.
I'm confused about the rankings, to be real honest with you. And maybe you can help me out, because I'm looking at Florida and they've got 26 commitments. They do not have a 5-star. They have 16 4-stars and they have 10 3-stars. Tennessee has 1 5-star, 16 4-stars, and 8 3-stars. So will somebody explain to me, other than just maybe a couple of 26 as opposed to 25 commits, will somebody please explain to me why Florida's class is 3 spots higher than Tennessee?
It doesn't make sense. I agree with you. My money goes on. It's that extra commit. It's that extra commit. Even if he's a 3-star, beefs up their class to the overall score that it's at. So look, it's kind of the old adage of like, if you have 1 5-star, I mean, it isn't this case, but someone says you gotta find one player that's going to work out. I'm going to give you 1 5-star, Dave, and I'm going to take 5 3-stars. Who do you think is more likely to find the player that works out at the college level? I mean, I actually think of 5 3-stars, one of them is almost 100% going to work out.
Yeah,
but the 5-star could be a bust.
Yeah, no, you're right. If you went 3 3-stars, I would side with a 5. But the fact that you're going 5, I mean, I've always said that the way recruiting works, and you can look at any class if you would like to, any single class, it turns out 50-50. 50% of the guys are contributors, 50% aren't. Now, part of that's because of the opportunity, part of that's because they can play or not. But 5-stars, they bust all the time, and it's nothing new. And when you see
that 2000,
go ahead.
Rather than bodies, Lane Kiffin went for all stars in that 2009 class. How'd that work out?
Oh, it didn't work out well at all. But I mean, he had a good group of felons. So if that's what he was shooting for, that wasn't that bad.
If they were all on the same team in prison, man, no one was going to mess with them.
No, they actually were going to make that. What was the Michael Irvin movie, The Longest Yard?
Oh yeah. Lane Kiffin literally could have made The Longest Yard with just his players at Tennessee.
Give us an update on the poll question, if you don't mind, Caleb, because we've got some prospects we want to tell you about here momentarily. We've got 4 to watch on offthehooksports.com, as we'll keep track. We'll keep you on track when it comes to recruiting. But what's our poll question? Where are we with that?
Which last name would you prefer? Hooker or Pickle? They're just sucking up to you, Dave. Hooker's at 86%. Pickle's
Hooker is a cool last name.
Steve Sullivan, I did not know that. I don't want to share it, but I cannot believe when we're talking about terrible names. Wow, poor Pat Summitt's father. But
what was Pat Summitt's father's name?
Remember, her maiden name is Head, Pat Head Summit.
Oh,
Pat Summitt's father's name was Richard.
Okay. We're moving on now. Trucks, all about trucks, the right truck, right place, right time. That's worktruckswithanxllc.com. Trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. Process is quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. They have the fantastic, just awesome trucks that you can choose from, and they've got the cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes. and anything special, cranes or dump trucks. If you're a contractor, you need to know work trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, work trucks. Work trucks carries the trucks that you have to have downtown Birmingham, Clinton Highway, and Knoxville. Work trucks with an X, LLC.com. Caleb, so we weren't really surprised that Onis Conanbanny decided to go to Florida. We kind of saw the writing on the wall. Do you read anything into that where maybe it was a mutual decision, or do you think ultimately that Conanbanny just made it known that he didn't necessarily want to play in orange and he wanted to head down to Gainesville where they've got jorts galore?
I think Billy Napier is cashing in right now on the strong finish to the season. And there's a lot of encouraging of NIL boosters to say, look at what we're doing. Let's try to get some talent right now. And they put it into the recruiting class for 2025. They didn't put it in the transfer portal, which we're going to talk about in a little while. But I think that's what happened. And I think Onis Conanbanny, they were willing to end up paying him a certain amount of money that I don't think Tennessee was. And so as of right now, Florida's opening a checkbook for the recruiting trail. Don't know how long it'll last because Florida's schedule is not much easier this year than it was last year. In fact, it's not easier at all this year than it was last year. So, I mean, we're looking at, a team that, they have to visit LSU and visit Miami on September the 13th and the 20th. And I think they're going to lose both of those games. But I'll say this, that I think Billy Napier is basically selling them that, hey, guys, if you keep me around through 2025, I've got this top 10 class. And if you spend some money, I'll get another top 10 class in 2026. And then in 2026, the season, I'll be able to do some things when the schedule gets a lot easier. So I think right now, Florida's outbidding Tennessee for recruits on the recruiting trail. I think that's what's happening. And I think that's partially Tennessee doesn't want to outbid people for recruits. They want to spend the money necessary to keep. They want to do what we call the Larry Bird exception in the NBA, which Dave, where you can sign your already players for, and it won't count against the cap. They are focused on keeping the players they have rather than getting new players.
Well, and don't you think that's the way things are going to go from now on?
It is an underrated, I don't know if it's the way it's going to go. It's an underrated way of having an advantage over other teams because we're undervaluing right now chemistry and experience playing together, particularly, by the way, if you're Tennessee, because as we know now, with Josh Heupel's offense, there are some things you really have to learn and master that take some time to master before you can really run this offense well. And I think just the experience of being in it, I think partially Heupel believes the experience of being in the offense will make the offense still better than every other offense in the SEC. I think that's what he's banking on, is that his players will just be better by being more familiar with the offense.
Yep. So. I look at the rest of the rankings and where Tennessee falls. And we always used to say that you needed to be top 5 in recruiting. I don't think that's as much of an issue anymore. And we'll talk about that and why that's the case. But I look at the team rankings. I see Texas at number 1. I see Georgia at number 2, Ohio State number 3, Alabama number 4, Oregon number 5, Michigan number 6, Auburn 7, Florida 8, Texas A&M is 9, LSU is 10, and Tennessee is at 11. So if you want to factor that in, you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 schools out of the top 11 are still in the SEC. So I don't think it's time to throw dirt on the conference just yet.
Oh, no, I don't think it is right now either. I just think this is going to change over time. It's not going to change overnight, but it's going to change over time. And the money, you see, Dave, it's not about who they're going to get on the recruiting trail. It's about who's going to win in the transfer portal going forward. It's just the early stages. And Jimmy's right. First 5 years, you'll see a split. Next 5 years, this is a trend. The gap's going to widen. Like when the SEC versus Big Ten and national titles, you'll see a split the first 5 years.
And then you think after that, the Big Ten has a stranglehold around college football.
I think the Big Ten will start increasing its gap the next 5 years, particularly when years 8 through 10, the Big Ten will have renegotiated another TV contract, and that'll go from $1 billion to probably $1.3 billion. And the SEC is still going to be stuck in that 300. The Big Ten will be bringing in $1 billion more than the SEC by 2020 31.
Okay.
How does the SEC compete at that point?
I still think they have better talent, and a lot of that talent I don't believe in the discount thing anymore. I don't think that players are going to go play for Kirby Smart because he can get them to the NFL like they did to some extent with Nick Saban. And it wasn't a financial discount. It was, you're going to sit on the bench for 2 years, but you're going to be ready with more tread on your tire. And that was, they got a discount. I mean, they didn't have to, and I don't mean a financial discount, but they got guys they wouldn't have gotten because of their history. I don't think that happens anymore, Caleb. So I think
which favors the Big Ten.
Well, no, I think the one thing, though, you will see a discount or an edge. I think there's still a lot of pride for a guy who grows up in, let's say, Atlanta, and a guy that, wants to play in this area. I still think if all things are equal and Ohio State offers a guy from Valdosta, Georgia, and Georgia offers him, or even Tennessee or South Carolina, I think that young man is going to want to stay in the South.
Here's the thing.
I mean, let's face it too. I mean, the weather's nicer in the South, and I think you see population bases that are more centered around football. A lot of people don't know this. Birmingham is the #1 market in the United States of America when it comes to watching college football. Number 2 is Nashville. I mean, you could go on and on and on before you get down to Big Ten schools. So I think that passion will still win a lot of the prospects over.
Okay, to your point, I understand what you're saying, because to take it to baseball real quick, for those who don't know, St. Louis, the Cardinals had to move all the time. I don't know if you know this, Dave. The Cardinals had to move where they would trade for a player mid-season on the last year of his contract with his team that was going to let him go anyway. And the reason they did that was, St. Louis is a baseball town, hardcore. St. Louis is the one place where if you go to the inner cities, they're still playing baseball, not basketball. And they would make a judgment call where if they could trade for a player and get him to St. Louis for the final half year of his contract, if he could see how beloved baseball is in St. Louis, he'd want to sign a long-term deal with them to stay in that city because of how much they love baseball. So I get your point on the passion thing. That only works if the difference is on the margins. So for instance, a discount of like, okay, Michigan is offering $550,000 to a player and Georgia is offering $450,000. They may go to Georgia. The gap is so large. The difference in contracts for players isn't going to be on the margins. The difference in contract for players is going to be, you want $1 million to go to Michigan or Wisconsin, or do you want $300,000 to go to Georgia and Alabama? There's not a player in the world whose pride will outweigh taking that $1 million.
Yeah, but you do get to play close to your friends and stuff like that. I think
that you don't. No one does that.
Listen, if the numbers are that far apart, you're right. But I got to see that first. Listen, at that point, somebody's got to step in and do something and have some sort of salary cap. You can't have a school that's considered somewhat of the same ilk outbidding somebody by triple.
The school is not the one doing this. They are, but what I'm talking about is, and this is what I tried to bring up with you and Jimmy, it's not about the school or the salary cap, because that's just what the school can pay. It's the money the school is getting is now money that the boosters don't have to donate to the school. So the boosters can overspend on endorsements for these players. And they don't even have to go through the collective if they don't want to. And so the school can just speak with the boosters and say, hey, go buy us this player real quick. I'm telling you, that's going to be the move. And this is where people are like, well, that's $20 million for the school, not the boosters. Guys, Dave, you know this. Boosters spend well over, $50 million on a school at any given time?
Yeah, I mean, those are probably the mid-level boosters. Those aren't even the Haslams of the world.
Yeah, exactly. So you tell them now the money they had set aside to endow a practice facility can now go to buying players. And I get what Jimmy says with, but they can't write that off as much on their taxes. They can write it off some because they can call the endorsement a business expense. But more importantly, I keep saying this, they're just going to bribe Congress to change the tax code where they can say this is an they could probably legally call this somewhat an educational expense, right? An endorsement for a college athlete. Like, they're going to find a way to call that an educational expense, the same as it is of endowing a practice facility. So I think they will get the same write-offs as this. And the Big Ten boosters will have a lot more money to throw around because they won't have to throw anything around on the infrastructure of the school because of all the money coming into the school. These differences aren't on the margin. So yeah, when I left Memphis State, I mean, I had plenty of incentive my whole life. I would love to have gone back home to Memphis to be around my family and friends and just live like what I was comfortable with growing up. But at the end of the day, there were decisions for me where the pay was just a lot better if I moved to other places. And, you take those opportunities. You're not going to pass up. You're not going to say $300,000 or $1 million. I'd rather play close to my friends for $300,000, particularly when most of your friends at that point are probably also chasing the millions to go to the Big Ten schools.
Yeah. I think if it's 10 or 20%, then you'll see players stay around. If you're right and it's 300%, then no. I mean, the guys are going to take the money, and really, who could blame them? Coming up on the program, we're going to take a look at Tennessee football recruiting. The 2026 class is in full swing. I remind you, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Also coming up on the program, what else are we diving into, Caleb, as I'm having some computer issues here?
Yeah, we're going to talk about recruits to look at, and we are also going to talk about Tennessee's transfer portal ranking and whether or not it's a big deal.
All right, hang tight because it ain't good. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care
A guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, there we go. Tennessee's transfer portal ranking ain't great. It is National Signing Day, which doesn't mean much at all, because somehow we went from, in about 20 years, if you got one midterm enrollee, it was like a huge bonus to your class. And now everybody's ready just to show up at school. in the middle of the year. And I don't know if that means high school's gotten easier or the acceptance rate has gotten easier at the universities that we talk about. But National Signing Day is not what it once was. The transfer portal is arguably more important now, or protecting your players from the transfer portal. So what do you make of Tennessee and their standing with the other SEC teams?
So Tennessee has the third from worst ranked transfer class in the SEC. Texas and Florida are behind them. But adjusted for needs, Tennessee has the second worst grade in the SEC, only to Florida, which got a C-. Tennessee got a C, according
now,
to...
Wait. Are you doing the adjustment for needs?
No. Grant Hughes of 247 Sports did the adjustments.
Okay.
And so Tennessee got basically the point they're saying is Texas grade was a little bit better because they have a lot of talent, so they didn't need as many transfers. But they at least address needs with the transfers more. So with that in mind, Tennessee has the second worst transfer ranking in the class. And I spoke out of turn. I don't mean adjusted for how many transfers do you need, period. I meant like, did the transfers you get fill specific needs enough to outweigh it? That's why Texas got a better grade than Tennessee.
Okay, so
long story short,
to make sure everybody understands, is this looking at last year's class?
No, this year's. This most recent transfer portal window.
So the guys that are coming in this year to their new schools.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, Tennessee added Sam Pendleton, the interior offensive lineman from Notre Dame, Amari Jefferson, the Alabama wide receiver, Star Thomas, the Duke running back, and Wendell Moe Jr., the Arizona transfer offensive lineman. That was pretty much it. The question is, and I know Dave considers this a concern, but how much of a concern is this?
Okay, well, let's go ahead and we'll put it on the poll. I mean, very slightly. I think it's a big concern, and I think that Tennessee is basically going all in. I've made this comparison before that to me the transfer portal is now a college administrator's way of going to you and saying, I will give you as much as you need to keep players, to go get players, to do whatever. But it's analogous to when an NFL owner goes to a head coach and says, you got to fire some of your coaches. I'm giving you one more year. So do you see my comparison there? And I think you're seeing that at Florida. If Billy Napier doesn't win at a high level this year after the money they poured into that program, I think he's in trouble. I think that Ryan Day, hindsight's 2020 now, he won a national championship, but I think he would have been in trouble. I think they put a lot of that money that they had into keeping players. And I think that Tennessee's doing some of the same. And I think it's keeping players that they believe they still need. Now, I would argue they needed Scroll White, but I know Scroll White has a baby he's talked about, and he had to go where the money was best, and I don't blame him. Other than that, I don't think Tennessee lost a lot of talent that they just couldn't live without. So they're spending money right now, Caleb, on guys that they want to keep. Well, that calls into question your talent evaluation, which at the end of the day, that is absolutely the biggest determination of whether or not a coach is an elite coach or not. I'm not saying that you don't have to have other factors, but if you can't tell that that guy's a really good player instead of an okay player, you're going to have a really tough time competing at the SEC or Big Ten level. I think it's troublesome, and I'll continue to tell you why. It's Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial
I think it's troublesome because Tennessee's kind of going all in. And if they post an 8-4 season next year, which I don't think they will, or a 9-3 season and don't make the playoffs, which I think is a real possibility, Caleb, there could be trouble. There could be trouble in paradise. You go into 2026 after an 8 or 9 win season. I don't care what happens in a meaningless bowl game. There's going to be some people that expect you to win like now.
I think, and I disagree with you, I don't think it's troublesome because I think this is a sign of how confident Josh Heupel is in the talent evaluation he's done at Tennessee. He thinks that the guys he signed, particularly in his second, third, and fourth recruiting classes, are good enough that he doesn't have to go out and get transfer guys. The transfer portal was operated on by Tennessee for the first 3 years or 4 years more heavily because they lost so much talent from the Jeremy Pruitt era that they had to just fill guys fast. Josh Heupel wanted to build a program that, is of players that are in his system for a while, learn his offense, and then are ready to take over. This will be really the first year that happens, honestly, that he's got players that are experienced in his system, because Josh Heupel does believe that even though the offense is easy to figure out for a quarterback, it's maybe trickier to figure out for a receiver and maybe some interior offensive linemen. So maybe he wanted guys in the system for a little while before he was ready to plug guys in that he recruited. This is his first year to do that. He's taken the risk. Now, Dave, I'm going to also add that I'm not so sure just being a good transfer portal team or having a good transfer portal grade speaks well on your program. Guess the 4 schools that got an A grade in this column.
Okay, I'm interested.
Kentucky, Auburn, Ole Miss, and LSU. Don't those seem more like desperation grades than kids just wanted to go transfer to those schools?
I can't go. See, I go back to, did those schools go all in like Ohio State did? I mean,
Ohio State was desperate. Ohio State was desperate. It just worked out. And by the way, Ohio State spent the school that's pulling the Ohio State is LSU. LSU has the highest grade. Brian Kelly got an amazing transfer portal class, but Brian Kelly is desperate. You realize how bad he looks right now, given how Notre Dame played for the national title without him this year, and he just went 9-3.
Yes.
And so Brian Kelly is absolutely desperate. Ohio State was desperate. Look, as we know, Chip Kelly is now off to the NFL. They forced Ryan Day to bring in Chip Kelly. They forced that $20 million to spend, and they said, go win us a national title now or you're done. And he was all but fired after losing to Michigan. So, I mean, there was a level of desperate the whole time. Good transfer portal grades come out of desperation more than anything else. Wouldn't you agree that Mark Stoops is somewhat desperate?
Somewhat,
because the 8-5 thing, he can't do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's a little bit desperate. I think there are a lot of teams that are a little bit desperate out there.
And you and I definitely, and Hugh Freeze is definitely desperate, isn't he? After what Auburn just did this past year?
You would think so, certainly.
And Lane Kiffin is desperate year to year because Lane Kiffin just can't get the talent he needs on the recruiting trail. So, I mean, look, I'm just being honest with you. I think when you can take all those factors into account, the teams with the bad transfer portal grades, the 3 worst again, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. Yeah, Florida's desperate to a certain degree. Are you going to accuse Texas of being desperate?
No, not at this point. Do me a favor. The 4 highest rated midterm enrollees, obviously the quarterback would be one, and throw some others up there because we're going to take a look at Tennessee's incoming players and guys that are in the recruiting cycle right now. So a couple of players I want to take a look at, and this will be up on Off the Hook Sports later today if you want to check it out. Running back Justin Baker. You know, we haven't talked much about him. He's currently enrolled, 5'10", 205 pounds. He has run a sub-11 second time in the 100-meter dash. They're going to need somebody to carry the rock. And I think that we've probably overlooked Justin Baker because of the transfer from Duke. And you and I both like Peyton Lewis, but you know how those things can go with running backs. I mean, some guys, I could name one that was big and physical, but didn't like contact. I'm not saying that's the case with Peyton Lewis. I don't know yet, but I need to see it for an extended period of time. And then you have Deshaun Bishop. So no offense to Bishop, but I think that spot is going to be up for grabs. Justin Baker is a guy that I would watch as he is currently enrolled. Now, some guys that are, feel free to jump in here, Caleb, if you got thoughts on these guys.
No, I'm definitely with you on Justin Baker. You know, it's I mean, we talked about this last week. The highest rated midterm enrollee is obviously David Sanders, and he's going to be the most important to watch because I think we expect David Sanders to be the type of offensive lineman, one of the rare ones in college football that can be plugged into the starting lineup his first year, right, as a tackle. And so he's the one that I would watch more than anybody else. But yes, Justin Baker will be an intriguing one to watch, significantly so.
And then athlete Ethan Hauser. As Tennessee offers prospects early, but this is one that I would like for you to keep a close eye on because at 6'2", 185 pounds, he's an athlete prospect from Buford, Georgia High School. They actually offered him way back in his freshman year. I don't know how much longer they're going to have to do this and be ahead of the curve because I think that the program's raised up and you don't have to do desperation moves like this. But he was definitely one I would watch. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and predict he ends up a Vol. He's former teammates of UT running back Justin Baker and linebacker Jason Perlow, both part of the 2025 class and currently enrolled. We just mentioned Baker, of course. Yes.
And also, he was 6'2" as a sophomore in high school. That is kind of freakish for an athlete, too. Yeah. And so, I mean, he's going to get really, really, really good.
Great. Defensive lineman Anthony Jones, 6'5", 240-pound prospect, scheduled to visit Knoxville on June the 20th. Said the Vols lead for his services. He told On3 probably his number one school. So that would be a monstrous pickup. He is considering his top 5 schools: Arizona State, Michigan, UCLA, and Washington. I love those guys that are lean in that he's not too big where you feel like you have to play him at tackle, but could he be an Omar Norman-Lott type of player that relies on his speed a little bit more? Yeah, I think you could. And not, you put him in.
Yeah, and I want to stick with Anthony Jones for a minute because I also want to point this out. I always go based on where they're from. A lot of times, guys go track their history. Mobile, Alabama, and the surrounding areas of South Alabama is one of the best places for talent in America. It is a rich. There's a saying in North Alabama and South Alabama are a little bit different. There's a saying in Alabama where like North Alabama is where all the coaches come from, South Alabama is where all the talent comes from. And I mean, Mobile produces insane talent that they're almost always better than their recruiting stars indicate, and they usually are very highly recruited. It's a freakishly athletic place of talent.
Agreed. And I'm going to go ahead and send you his school because I forgot to mention that in the column that's about to go up. So if you don't mind checking that out as well. And then we have the young man, linebacker Brandon Rouse, 6'3". Braden Rouse, excuse me, 6'3", 210-pound prospect from Kell High School in Marietta, Georgia. Again, he's just a 3-star prospect. That this is one of those that I think Tennessee feels good about, and the fact that they targeted him, I think they feel good about their standing of him. So all that will be up on the website here momentarily. We would encourage you to check that out. Tomorrow on the program, we will talk some Tennessee basketball and quite a bit of that, as we love doing that. So I'll remind you, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. That is East Tennessee's largest volume dealer. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.